Bitcoin buys you time. Have you seen that movie with Justin Timberlake? I think it's called Just in Time, where the currency is literally hours and minutes ticking by and it's on the people's arms. And that this I've thought about this and I've brought up this movie in a few different videos, but I've been watching a lot of Brian Johnson lately and listening to him kind of talk about how well he's like optimizing his health organ by organ and reversing kind of the aging of every organ. And it made me think of, even in general, like rich people experience time differently. Rich people experience time differently. And the other thing that I've been thinking about in relation to time has been raising toddlers. And I feel like I'm always just kind of waiting. There's a lot of waiting. I've been saying this thing of like life feels very long. Like every day there's like, yes, there's a lot to squeeze in, but also there's a lot of time in every day. And I think it's interesting that whatever you're working on makes time feel like it's passing differently. And okay, so outside of just an esoteric kind of like philosophical discussion about time, like what does that have to do with Bitcoin? What it has to do with Bitcoin is that fiat money steals your time. Like your what is money? Money is your stored labor. Money is the technology that helps you exchange goods and services with other people and helps what you do productively translate over to others without having to do the coincidence of wants, right? And fiat, which inherently can't hold value, steals your time. It makes your labor worth less. Like you're not able to transport your stored labor over time. So even in that movie, like you can see the inflation in the movie goes up and the person isn't able to afford the bus and then their time runs out. That's a super good analogy to what's actually happening with fiat money, and Bitcoin reverses that. Like there's a part in the movie where he gets access to infinite time, and he realizes in that moment that he's moving too fast. Like the rooms that then he's in, he was moving too fast because he was used to always having to racing against the clock. Like you're always racing against the clock and you can't stop because like time is ticking, right? And the world can transition from a fiat money to a fixed standard money like Bitcoin, then all of the productivity in the world is accruing to the better money. It's not being siphoned off or lost in any way. And it gets really deep. And this is what made me think about Brian Johnson and the connection to Bitcoin buying you time, is that a lot of people have a hard time, and me included, like have a hard time wrapping our heads around kind of like, well, if that's possible to slow the aging of your organs, then how does that change our relationship with time? How does that change everything about kind of how many hours there are in a week, how many years there are in a life, what a typical workday looks like for you, what a typical weekend day looks like for you, completely breaks down when it's possible to like quote unquote don't die, right? And that's all the way to the extreme of like just trying to push your brain all the way there of what happens with that. But even taking it of like if the normal human lifespan gets extended to 150 years, like that changes everything. That changes everything we know about how much we need to get done, in any segment of time, right? And I mean, first off, to just like super telegraph it, that world is not possible without Bitcoin. That world is not possible on fiat money because fiat money can't carry your labor through time. So as technology of like human life gets better, it's going to need money that gets better as well. Like everything about society, all of the technology of everything is going to have to get better, right? And another thing he talks about is like offloading the mental weight of making the correct decision. We can now offload like we know our bodies are a machine. We know what the correct answer is. we mathematically, scientifically know what the correct answer is. And then it's all about, can we get our brain to make the correct decision, right? That's the same thing with money now. We mathematically, scientifically know what the best money is. Like, we know that having a like understood monetary policy that is set, that everyone can rally around, creates a better society and creates better, cleaner rules, rather than having these like arbitrary knobs all over the place, right? It's the same thing. So as we move towards just like having like computers help us make the correct decision at every step of the way, what are we going to do? What is our brains, what are human brains going to do with the excess like time? And that's something that I've been wrestling with in my own life, is just kind of, because there's another concept of like your work expands to fill the time that you give it, right? And so a skill that I've been working on is just working faster and doing more, right? And trusting yourself that you can work faster and do more and maintain quality all at the same time. Like, you don't have to cut corners to move faster. You have to become more efficient and find the way to become more efficient, right? And that's possible. Like, everything, toddlers teach you a lot. Like, everything is a skill and you can get better at it. And so I think part of the like heartache with watching a guy like Brian Johnson optimize, like hyper optimize his life, is almost like a fear of like, what will we do with the surplus? Like, if I no longer have to make my own decisions in X area because I've offloaded it to the ability like to have a computer just like make the correct decision, and I feel better about that, what am I going to do with that surplus of time? And honestly, like, look, like this already happens right now. Like, when people retire, they go through a little bit of an identity crisis because their work, or like how they filled their time, contributed to their self-worth, right? And so as more and more like technology advances both in health and in money, there's going to be a really interesting thing that happens where we as humans have to separate our self-worth from how we spend our time.